It couldn't have smelled that bad.
All right, preparing resin should be a relatively simple task. Firstly, get your resin. I have here the Achilles Dreadnought from Forge World by Games Workshop. This is for Custodes players, you'd know this. And this is Gamer's Grass basing bits. This is the temple one, the statues and the columns specifically. Both of these things are made of resin. And then once you have your parts, of course, I'll explain what this is in a sec. This is the most important part though. Get a respirator. Because cleaning and preparing resin involves you cutting away and hacking tiny little pieces of resin. And resin dust specifically is incredibly toxic. So you have two choices. Either spend $40 to acquire this baby from whichever store you choose, or go outside. Outside should do it unless the wind is specifically blowing in your face, like a garage or something. It should be okay, so long as it's not an enclosed space that you can clean up afterwards. Pick that space. There's also a third option. Wear a mask that you all have lying around. That should be okay for larger chunks, but with the fine dust that you're going to be encountering when you're sanding, perhaps it's not as good. That's why this is needed. Again, cheap. Find them anywhere. That's the most important part though, or go outside. This is not really so much it comes to cleaning. This is the aftermath when you're actually assembling. So you'd use this, have this in hand. Have this in hand. Resin, for those of you who don't know or aren't aware, they don't melt with plastic cement. They're too strong for that. Different materials, right? Now, most important parts would be super fine detail cutters or sprue cutters / side cutters. And we have here in ascending order of grit, that is sandpaper. This is when we've hacked off the piece and you want to trim it down so it's fine and smooth. So I've chosen this one, which comes in a pack, 400, 600, 1000. And I've chosen to grab 2000 and 3000. Actually, this one comes with 2500 and 3000, but I think going to 2000 to 3000 should be good enough if I've done my job properly. But otherwise, that's really it. I may grab a hobby knife, but that's completely optional at this point, really, because if your sprue cutter is fine and precise, you're not really gonna need the hobby knife to trim any more excess if you've done your job correctly. But it doesn't hurt to have one on the side. So basically, I'll show you the steps in about a second here. Last but not least, this concoction is nothing fancy. This is just water, or soapy water at that. Just use dishwashing liquid, seriously. That is already a bunch of soaking pieces from the basing bits. You'll notice it's half empty. I've pre-soaked this, so that's good. You can soak them before and after. What I mean by before and after is before and after you clean them and prepare them, right? But some people, you can skip before. You can go straight to the cleaning parts of it, but you definitely have to clean it after, because these might have the residue from printing, which will get in the way of you priming your model kits or your basing bits, right? And it's gonna make it look, basically your primer's not gonna stick as well, and then your paint subsequently will not stick as well. That's what you're trying to avoid. And also with the preparation comes a lot of resin dust, and you wanna wipe that off, basically. That's what the water is for. That's what soaking is for. Soak it for about an hour or two. That should be sufficient. If you're paranoid like me, soak it for a day. This is resin, it's not gonna melt. That's also dishwashing liquid. So you're okay. I've seen, I think Eon's a Battle, shout outs to that YouTube channel. He's using an ultrasonic jewelry cleaner to clean off his resin parts. I think that's a little overkill, not necessary. You can also skip this part here of you soaking it if you have an old toothbrush on hand. But considering that I don't, you can like lightly scrub it off with the soapy water in conjunction, and then rinse it off afterwards. But since I don't have that, we're gonna have to stick with this. All right, so let's break down resin. So resin is a material that's different from plastic, hence why super glue for attachment is necessary. Typically your resin prints, unless they've already cut it off for you, will come with two parts. This big thing is called the key. Typically that's where you would find the parts number, or like again, like Games Workshop, right? I mentioned Forge World is by Games Workshop, so typically they'd inscribe it there. Anything of that sort, they'd put it there. Yeah, so here's the part number. That's called the key. The thing that's attaching the key and the part is called the gate. Though the key name is a little bit not that well known. Really, people know it as the gate. So these are called resin gates, essentially. And they come in various forms, right? We have here the dread spear for the Achilles dreadnought. You have to remove that. That's not part of the dreadnought. So that will have to come clean off, and then you sand it basically so it's smooth. Same thing here. That's not part of the spear blade. You'll have to cut that off, right? And then you'd be like, well, that's quite simple. No, not quite. See this part here where it kind of extends from the actual mold? Yeah, you'll have to clean that off too. Printing can vary. Games Workshop, from the opinion of a lot of people, at least with the Forge World stuff, is kind of getting complacent. Typically the quality is good. I would say 7.5 to 8 out of 10. But for the price you're paying for all these Forge World items, it's kind of not acceptable. I mean, I'd still give it like a 7.5 in terms of printing quality, because the detail is there. It's incredible. But yeah, the fact that it has quite a bit of trimming that needs to be done, right? So there's that. So the gates have to come off. These are just the parts here. Same with that stuff. Same with that stuff, right? Now, let's take a look at a company that actually kind of does its due diligence in a way, right? Let's take a look at Gamer's Grass. Now, you guys know Gamer's Grass, quite a popular line for the wargaming enthusiasts, right? High quality resin prints, typically used for dioramas or basing needs, right? They have a lot of tufts, flowers, but they also have basing bits and actual bases, pre-made or just the plain ones. And I don't know if you noticed, despite this being resin, it doesn't have the key and the gate or resin gates. They've already cut it off for you. So convenience factor off the charts. Now, do we assume that they've cleaned this? No. I think we still have to do your due diligence. And I don't know if you notice. Come on, focus. Hello? There we go. They cut it off, but not completely. So if you're particular and you want it flush, you'd still kind of cut that down to size or just completely remove it entirely. Granted, this is a ruin, judging by what they were going for, right? Like you can see, this thing is barely holding together. But, you know, still, it's good to do your due diligence, right? Just removing that nub there. So they all have that, all of them. So they removed the gates for you, but that's basically all they did. That's basically all they did, right? You can tell. See that part. And they're not like, you can kind of connect them from what no. You can't. You can try connecting them by gluing them, putting green stuff, right? But that's not the intended purpose. They basically just removed some of them. At least that's my assumption. I'm sure there probably is a way to connect them. I am seeing some indents right there, but that just might be printing. Can someone confirm in the comments if it's intended, at least the ones with the indent built in, or that's not intended at all, that's a printing flaw, and they actually just cut off the gates, and that's all they did. Regardless, these are still high quality prints, I'm sure you've noticed, and it is our job to clean them. So, take your trusty sprue cutter and just cut it off. That's basically it. Nothing fancy. You can use your knife here, but it is recommended you use a sprue cutter instead. They are better for this kind of job. The knife, you'd probably use it for trimming more, right? Yeah, basically just a trimming job. Yeah, there we go. Kind of clean, actually. Whoa, very nice. Though it kind of indents a little, so we'll... Actually, no, it's quite nice. Yeah, it's very much indented. We'll have to smooth it out, though, so it's a little bit more level, but otherwise, this thing has to be smoothed out, too. I could maybe trim it with my hobby nipper, should be easily done. But for this dread spear, that's basically it, at least for the gates. This one I've already removed. This is the part where you would use your knife to trim it off. This one I can definitely just cut it off. Right? And this part, that's where you sand, right? Let's see if I can remove a little bit more. Nah, not worth it. I'll just sand that part. So this is typically what your parts would look like. No gates, right? Nothing visible. And that can be fixed with sanding, which we'll eventually, we'll get to right now, actually. Because we'll finally move on to using the basing bits. Also, resin, typically in the packaging, if they're not careful, will come with bent parts. This is a reality that a lot of Games Workshop hobbyists have just come to get used to. It's just part of the hobby at this point. And maybe not for people who use, resin conversion kits, right? It's just a reality that people have to get used to. Obviously, it's probably worse for companies that don't take care of their printing. Games Workshop. But, for this, it's an easy solution, just easy fix. Just grab a blow dryer, right? Heat it up a little bit, bend it into shape, then pop it into the freezer, for about an hour or two. Should strengthen it back up, and then you're good to go. It's very straight, right? So, yeah.
Grab your respirator or go outside. We're about to sand. And I'll try to be a little louder than usual. But I am wearing a mask, so it might be a little difficult.
All right, so basically we're done. That's it. Look at that. So smooth. Oh yes. And also I decided to forego the 2500 and 3000. I've only ever ended up using the 2000, and that's because it's not that big of a bump to begin with. And if I do it anymore, it's gonna shave more. Now I just smoothed it out. Smoothed. What the hell am I talking about? Okay, yeah, look at that, perfect. And then this, now it's perfectly even, but in the middle there, you can see there is a hidden mold line that we never initially saw. Does this mold line matter? And I would say no, because the other side is completely smooth. This will go up top. This will go at the bottom where you would stick your super glue and put it on the base. So that part doesn't really matter. But if your models, the actual model's body has a mold line, please do your absolute best to remove it with a hobby knife. Be careful, right? But yeah, look, no mold lines. That's part of the indentation of the actual body. That's not a mold line. Actually, wait, that might be a mold line. So this part here, not very obvious, but there, you would kind of smooth that out. But anyway, see, this is nice. That's nice. All right, one last thing. The only thing left for us to do is to dunk your finished pieces onto the soapy water. That's it. Do it for about an hour or so, and you're good. All right.